the Iranian people are more pro-American than many Americans on the left.
Shocking.
That is actually less shocking if you know anything about the left. A few recent news stories have made very strange comparisons between the Democrats in our government who want to tear down the American way of life and the oppressed people around the world who want their country to be more like America. It is a comparison between those who have freedom trying to institute authoritarianism and not knowing what's good when they got it, and those who are suffering under an authoritarian regime and would like to have just a little bit of freedom.
Just a little. They're actually not asking for very much. A lot of them are okay with being in slightly authoritarian government. They just want a little bit of freedom. They're not even asking for identical to American freedom. Anyway, so here's a few examples of recent news stories. Currently, Hong Kong protesters are facing the complete removal of their freedoms by the Chinese government, and they are praising America in the streets, waving American flags, singing the American anthem, and are praising our president. The Hong Kong protesters love America, and they love America because they want their government to have those Western freedoms, those American freedoms that they have actually enjoyed many of for quite a while, but those are being stripped away. So it's like going from living in America to being forced to live under a Chinese government. It's basically what's happening. And how did the Chinese government respond to this? They've been killing, maiming, and arresting many protesters in response to it. In November, the Trump administration condemned China's unjustified use of deadly force against the Hong Kong people and said that he stood with the supporters.
Let's see here. In early January, which would be this month, Iranian officials painted American and Israeli flags at the entrances to university and government buildings. And in some street locations, with the intent of allowing or rather forcing their people to walk on these flags as a sign of disrespect to the two countries. However, many protesters, students, and professors refused to trample the flags and even berated the few individuals who did. Last week, a video circulated on social media showing the Iranians who refused to disrespect the American flag and who called for their government to be replaced by one that would support open and positive relations with the West.
I want to point out, they're not asking for identical Western freedoms. They're asking for gays not be thrown from buildings, the ability to listen to music, the ability to not wear a hijab, and
maybe not have 90% of their economy devoted to creating terror around the world, yes, forcing the West to have to come in and massively disrupt their economy.
Yeah, stop spending the most of their money on proxy wars, spend it on the people, and to stop threatening the Western world. They're not asking for very much. They want peace. They don't want to be like America. They want general freedoms and for them to not be constantly at war with the rest of the world. And Trump has put out an olive branch to them. The Iranian people have been protesting the government heavily for the past few months. They've been protesting before that, but it's been growing over the last year and has come to a much higher level recently. The protests have intensified after the world learned that Iran shot down an airliner, killing many Iranian citizens. These protesters have not only been against the mullahs, but have been very pro-American. The Iranian government has responded to the protests by shooting and killing more than 2,000 and imprisoning many more of their own citizens. Trump responded to Iran's crackdown by demanding that they stop killing their own people via Twitter.
Yep. Let's see here. Iran and Hong Kong, the Iranian and Hong Kong people know what it's like to be disarmed, to have their speech and privacy restricted, and their freedoms taken by authoritarian governments. Both Iran and Hong Kong used to have westernized democracies, or at least democracies with many of the same freedoms that we enjoy, especially in Hong Kong. And we know what it was like to lose them. We get to see that from them, and it's something that we should be very thankful that we haven't had to go through here. And God willing, we never will. But yeah, it's again the way we did a pretty long dire discusses on Hong Kong a few months ago, and what you guys got to realize is that used to be like living in New York. Maybe before the bail bond got dismissed, but it used to be very very westernized. It was a UK protectorate. Britain used to own them, and then kind of after the post-colonial era, the world kind of decided that maybe Britain should give it back to China, and Britain knew what was going to happen to those people if they give it back to China, and so they tried to make some sort of deal to keep Hong Kong safe, keep it a westernized democracy, but China's kind of coming in early and trying to topple that over. And it's again, imagine living in any Western American city, and just all of a sudden overnight you've got the Chinese military coming in and shooting your friends and telling you all kinds of things that you're not allowed to do anymore, and coming for you probably. A similar thing in Iran, where it was at least a secular democracy.
They were forced to wear hijabs. There was no Sharia law. People could not be Muslim, and it was not a problem. It was more the leader, who was still a dictator at the time, was extremely pro-America, and he liked American culture, so he encouraged it in the populace. That's before the mullahs came in and took over and killed him.
Yeah.
So compare that to the Democrats. They have called for the complete disarming of the American people, making certain speech illegal, and calling for the federalizing and centralizing of our economy. And they've also supported the violent suppression of opposing ideas, and they have criticized the free and capitalist nature of our country. The Democrats have called for a long time for the fundamental change of our country. Both China and the China and the mullahs wanted this fundamental change as well. They didn't want their people to have the ability or the freedom to go against their will. They didn't want their people to have the ability to resist their tyranny either. The Democrats are calling for us to surrender our freedoms for security, and they are in a way very similar to those same kinds of corrupt tyrants, only they don't currently have the power to enforce their tyranny.
Not yet. It should be noted that in all three cases, in our country, Hong Kong, and Iran, Trump has consistently condemned violence, whereas in these other areas, the people trying to take over have, very much instituted violence. They've been the perpetrators of it.
And the Democrats have encouraged violence as well. So, kind of the same.
Yeah, and it's I'm sure if any of you guys out there are, maybe a little more left leaning, or if this gets picked up by anybody else, or you just hear other people talking about, well, the right commits violence too. Yeah, the big difference between that is that there's no generalized support for violence on the right, especially in our commentators and our politicians, whereas on the left, that is not the case even a little bit. The left politicians, Maxine Waters comes to mind, along with a lot of others, but they have been discussing tactics of how you should be. There's no. It's not even an over exaggeration to say it. They're talking about harassing people, and that's where it starts.
And that also it's a support and justification for the Black Bloc, for Antifa. Every time they're saying that Antifa's reaction is understandable and justified, and that they are overall a good group, they are giving cover to a group that is using violence to support their political ideology. And an example of this, of how the violent radicals find home in the Democrat Party, is how the Bernie Sanders campaign workers are these violent revolutionary communists.
That's so surprising. Who would have thought that people who wanted communism would be violent revolutionaries? I thought all communism was just it was always just sunshine and rainbows. I never would have thought they would violently take us over, or that maybe they were lying about not wanting to do that. Them being, well, we're the one good communism in history where we're not trying to kill everybody. It turns out that they are.
Yeah. So the politicians, they often don't expressly call for the violent action, but they support the groups that do it. The politician is the friendly face on the violent cause.
Yeah. So when you guys are seeing this stuff in the news, to the extent that they even show it in the news, but it's a good reminder, and I think more people need to realize that this is a reminder of the big differences between America and the rest of the world. These people are fighting to get back something that they lost. It would be very nice for us to never have to fight for something that we lose. Maybe we can fight to keep what we have, but it would be much preferable to do that than to have to, give it up or have it taken at some point and then have to fight to get it back.
In both cases, in Hong Kong and Iran, there's people alive that have that witnessed freedom, got to feel freedom, and then lost it. And we are sitting on the precipice where we have the freedom, and a large portion of our government wants us to give it up. We should learn from the example sitting before us. There's a life lesson here, and I hope we learn it.